There's a scientist and a general. They're trying to launch up a satellite and it messes up. And you're thinking, okay, well, maybe it just messed up. No, probably sabotage. And probably by the Soviet Union, maybe. That's what people are thinking at this time. You're going to start to see a lot of talk about Russia. So you'll have plenty of time to talk about the Red Scare and the Cold War and the kind of the posturing that we did with the Soviet Union.
Yeah, I guess what's black and white and red all over is a penguin, a Russian penguin in the middle of the Cold War.
A communist penguin.
Communist penguin in the middle of the Cold War.
Cinematic fantastic.
Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
I'll show you who I am and what I am.
Bitten by a werewolf and lives, becomes a werewolf himself.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Weatherford.
And your other host, William Weatherford.
Get ready for opinions, dad jokes,
and bad jokes
as we watch and review sci-fi and fantasy films from the classics of yesteryear to the new favorites of today. Welcome to episode 55 of Cinematic Fantastic.
55.
I'm 55. It's a big
reference to a video.
Shiggity swell, 55. Shiggity swat, shiggity
55.
This is a milestone. This is a milestone of an episode because we're talking about 1950s Destination Moon and also from 1950
First
Rocketship
1950s
X-M.
movie and the
We're in a new
two
decade.
films that started us off with space travel 19 years before that would even happen.
That's true,
And
1969.
scarily accurate.
It is scarily accurate. And one thing that I'll mention real quick before we get started as it relates to our podcast is the first episode that we did was Frankenstein from 1919? Is that right? The silent Frankenstein version is 1916? I don't remember.
Well, yeah, no,
and
and we did Trip to the Moon.
Trip to the Moon, based off of From the Earth to the Moon, and
Where they blasted off to the moon, and we're right here and now doing where they would do it.
Again, like you said, this is 19 years before we would do it for real. We would land on the moon for real, contrary to what some people on the internet believe. Again, you can
in the Apollo space mission, which, if that were accurate to its name, would result in Buzz Aldrin and Armstrong landing on the sun.
The sun, right? Because
it's the sun.
Apollo's the god of the sun.
Because it's not. You don't want to call it Icarus because that would be flying too close to the sun.
Well, the perfect.
Or shoot, wasn't there like a dude who was also trying to be like Apollo? He was like, "I'm your son. I'm gonna do everything you do," and then he died in the chariot.
Oh, Phoebus.
Phoebus? Yes, that would be.
I don't remember. That was yeah.
Basically the same as calling it Icarus.
I'm not sure. The mythology of that. But I do know that the name of the ship in Destination Moon would have been the perfect name for the ship for the Apollo mission. Instead of calling it Apollo mission, you'd call it the Luna mission. All right. So first off, when you're watching Destination Moon, something you'll notice is no talk of magical warp engines, no space aliens. No ray guns. This feels modern, like it's 1950.
A pure theory, because
it's like
the act of traveling onto the moon was fantasy in and of itself.
It was to people in the 1950s, and we'll explain. And there's a scene in this movie where it explains.
They'd be reading all the Jules Verne's books about going there on a train. How silly is that?
That's ridiculous.
Now it's just a train, but there's only one freight compartment.
Right. And the rocket is mostly just like it was during the Apollo mission with the Saturn V rocket was the name of the rocket, and it's mostly fuel tank. It's like this huge fuel tank and this itty bitty little place at the top that the people actually are in, because you've got to break gravity. You've got to break gravity's hard hold against you. I mean, we're constantly
it's a big planet.
Pulled down. Yeah, and gravity's a bully. It's always trying to push you down, and you've got to really exert some thrust from those engines to get off the planet because of the gravity. You don't have to do as much to get off of the moon. You do have to do some, and we'll talk about what it takes to get off of the moon. Not just on the moon, but off the moon and back to Earth. It's quite an undertaking. So
actually, that just brought to mind just the general oh, we're going up into orbit. And I was like, I wonder if I could tell some people who think specific things, like how we have satellites orbiting the Earth in order to have internet. Checkmate, flat earthers.
Oh, right. So you're like, hey, by the way, flat earthers,
Top
what about
secret.
geosynchronous orbit? What does GPS stand for? And they're like, global positioning. Oh, ooh, gotcha.
Global positioning.
Global position.
Exactly.
It's not flat plane positioning.
Well, you think it's just spinning around in a circle over top of the Earth?
No. You see, William, I don't know if you knew this, but
how does it reach everywhere?
We live in a D&D style universe where anything fantastical
is hexagons.
possible. It's all turtles all the way down. We're on top of a flat plane that's on top of 4, or is it 5 elephants, depending on what you think of from Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. Definitely a great series, by the way. And then it's a turtle, the great Atuan. Below that, a sea turtle swimming in space.
Now, what's the true fantasy? Speaking of a true fantasy, the movie does begin with explaining the progressive form of transportation.
There's a scientist and a general at the very beginning, and they're trying to launch up a satellite, and it messes up, and you're thinking, okay, well, maybe it just messed up. No, probably sabotage, and probably by the Soviet Union, maybe. Well, I mean, they didn't say it by name, but that's what people are thinking at this time. You're going to start to see a lot of talk about Russia, so you'll have plenty of time to talk about the Red Scare and the Cold War and the kind of the posturing that we did with the Soviet Union. You kind of like, oh yeah, well I got a space program too. Oh yeah, well I got one too. Well I got big rockets too. It's kind of.
I guess what's black and white and red all over is a penguin. A Russian penguin in the middle of the Cold War.
A communist
penguin in the middle of the Cold War.
I think we figured out what a possible candidate for a cold open is, for a Cold War open. Anyway, back to this. So the scientist and the general, they're wanting to do this. This aeronautics expert guy, Jim Barnes, he's talking to Cargraves about a new project he's got called a rocket to the moon.
Just for information, I was talking about how going to the moon was fantasy.
Yeah.
In that all of these movies, both of these movies, the whole plot is them going to the moon and seeing what's happening. And so was A Trip to the Moon.
Yes, that's actually true, but this is much longer.
But it's an upgrade in knowledge base in terms of A Trip to the Moon.
Yes,
had to make a lot more guesses.
Very scientific
and creative liberties
basis.
Compared to these movies.
Yes, and there's a lot of science in this. You'll find, I was kind of surprised when I watched this. I was like, that's really close, guys. You're almost there. You're like this far from 100% truth.
Yeah, you may think these movies simple, but they're revolutionary for their time. Now let's.
I would say that's true. The first
context.
movie, the second movie, I think they were like, well, that we did show something floating. So next scene, that's how, And the other one, they take it more seriously and go, we're gonna really lean into this. Weightless gravity.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Oh, we are definitely doing that. I'm sorry. So back to this. Barnes and Cargraves, they need funding for this. They can't go. They don't want to go to the government to get the money because then the government will control it.
This little bit of thing, what they said, is not great because they're like, oh, the government can't handle this. Because they're they aren't talented enough and they move slow. Because I've talked about before
this is
how
so
big companies are
libertarian.
like yachts.
This movie is, if you're okay, I don't know what your political beliefs are, guys out there. I mean, we have different beliefs of all over the world. But there's a belief system in politics called libertarianism where basically it's like, I made it. It's mine. If I want to launch into space, I'm going to launch into space. And that's very much so what this is industrialists, people getting together going, we're going to launch into space.
Yeah, the American
Now,
industry is the
we're
only one
doing
who
that
can
right
do
now.
this. Okay,
Yeah,
let me build a point here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, the American industry can accomplish this feat, but where are you going to get the funds?
Well, they're
Who
doing that
pays
right
the
now,
industry
William.
to build factories and roads?
They're doing that right now. I don't know, guy you may have heard of, Elon Musk and SpaceX. He's doing that right now. He's planning on building bases on the moon, or also to be a way station, so that because the gravity is less on the moon, so the rockets that you build there can launch off to.
Yeah, but they still get his taxes though. I've got a second point here.
Okay, go
about the government isn't talented enough. Isn't NASA like literally a government agency?
Yes, National Aeronautics and Space
there's
Administration. There was no NASA at this time, though.
Capable researchers.
NASA came out. When did NASA get started? Late 50s, I think?
8 years after this movie. Even if that was like, oh, it's 8 years after. They didn't know NASA. Yeah, NACA existed. National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. 1915. Forefront of World War I plane technology and the first wind tunnel. And that was government.
But that was more aeronautics than space administration. So they were like, we're going to focus on the national
because
and the aeronautics part.
They were in the middle of wars, so.
Yeah, we got to get those planes flying. We got to get those
But
planes.
yeah, industries make things, but
gotta
who
kill
fought
those
them?
Germans.
The government
Yeah.
is the ultimate thing. And literally, Roosevelt ordered 2,000 planes built, and they made them. So that's how that went.
That's not.
And
That's
this
no.
does
That's no
get brought
joke.
up immediately. The shareholders do go immediately. He's like, the industry has to make this, and he's like, but where are we gonna get the funds? He says he's gonna build it on credit.
Maybe the only fictional. We say fictional. The only fictional fantasy part of this movie is the fact that these industrials were able to make it happen. But the funny thing is, William,
I don't
maybe
think you can build a rocket on credit. That would be ludicrous.
Maybe it was ludicrous for the
And non-tax
1950.
deductible.
The United States actually borrows money from on credit with other. We actually have a credit. United States actually has a credit rating. That's what they call. That's when they say America's in debt. You know, when they say America has a debt to pay off, it's that money we borrowed against.
Yeah, but I'm talking specifically about we the tiny people are going to do a huge thing on credit, and no one's gonna go up to you and go,
well,
that's
if you want to think of that as the science fiction part of that, then go right ahead. But if you replace the fact that they had industry doing it at 1950 and just say NASA or have another company name that they made up and say, well, that's their stand-in for, that's like proto NASA, then just go with it. So you have to go with it.
I think the only other objection is that a Texan says we need to build the rocket in Texas, which actually, funnily enough, Houston, Texas.
Yeah, that's right. Houston, we have a problem. Exactly.
So they would
Cape Canaveral in Florida,
Texas.
Houston. Yeah. So there is.
But
some
let's go
truth
back and
to
talk
that.
about the technical aspects of the things, which was the
Should
rocket
we talk
is mostly
about the technical, or should we talk about the character that I recognized from this movie? It's Mr. Woody Woodpecker, animated by Walter Lantz.
Hold on, that one was a bit crazy. But I wanted to say
I didn't understand physics until Woody Woodpecker told me what it was.
Yeah, so it's composed of a fluid reaction mass, which it would be like hydrogen and liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen mixed together. They say water heated to dry steam by atomic pile, and then the steam is expelled out. Which, no, they would not do that. Apparently, there were
Steam
Russian
is not
jets they
enough.
were working on.
I don't think
that would
steam
do
is
that, but it's too
steam
dangerous.
is not quite enough to get you. You've got
We
to
wouldn't
use
have
the
nuclear
rockets.
We wouldn't have nuclear space travel at this time.
No, they keep using the word atomic. Okay, William, this is the 50s. Everybody loves atomic this, especially after the atomic
it would basically
bomb.
be a nuclear factory inside this rocket, and that would be far too dangerous at all. Like, a nuclear factory is dangerous by itself, leakage.
We're already, when we launch vessels into space in the next 30 years, they're going to have...
What's the word with that? A shrapnel?
Nuclear fusion. There's going to be nuclear fusion involved. There's going to have to be. So you've got to have enough shielding to keep the humans in the spaceship from getting, all kinds of cancers and things like that.
I gotta have the nuclear ion batteries for all my homies who play Subnautica, I guess. Yeah, let's get to the Woody Woodpecker short, because there's some things in here that I have questions about too.
Now here's my question, and I know the answer to it, so I'm going. So why is Woody Woodpecker in this? The director, was it the director or producer? Was George Powell? And
I think that was the producer.
Yeah, George Powell. He was good friends with Walter Lantz, and he was like, I'm going to put a Woody Woodpecker in every single movie that I do. And now that they've said that, we're going to have to, when we see a George Powell movie, we're going to have to look for Woody Woodpecker.
This would also be the first Grace Stafford would do Woody's voice, which I think was like the wife of the animator.
Oh, yeah, Walter Lantz's wife. Okay. I didn't know that.
But yeah, this is an original animation. NASA would reuse this with slight tweaks, obviously, because some of the things in here aren't very correct. But they would show this to people.
Like a shotgun. It's kind of like a sitting on a shotgun. Yeah.
Yeah, hold on. They would show this cartoon to the people in the 60s when they were like, we're about to do space travel in this year, or year before, or year after. I mean, from time perspective. Anyway, I was talking last episode about the Reluctant Dragon and those anthology Disney anthologies that were like, I like how they do like the explaining things about the world with cartoon sort of thing. This movie is fantastic. Instantly for that.
It's humorous. I'll admit.
I didn't expect it, and I was like, wait a moment.
Like,
this
what?
is a salute. This is a Caballeros moment. And Saludos Amigos moment. Perfect.
Right.
It immediately ups the movie in my book. One mistake is they say that landing back on Earth from the moon is easier because it's downhill. It is in fact quite hard to land on a specific part of a planet due to the fact it's spinning and orbiting. And also you're landing on something that's spinning and orbiting.
I think what they're saying, William, is that there's not as much gravity. There's 1/6 the amount of gravity on the moon, so you don't have to use as much fuel to launch it, and then as soon as it gets in the gravity
they said it was easier because it was downhill. That was the word, downhill.
They're using country language, like it's downhill from here. They're using country language.
The moon,
yeah, they don't mean literally.
The moon moves
William.
At a velocity of 2,288 miles per hour, and the Earth at 67,000 miles per hour. So that's a lot of miles per hour that it's moving.
But they don't they don't really mean downhill. They mean when you go downhill, you don't have to expend as much energy.
The planets are moving fast.
Right,
yeah,
but the gravity does a lot of the work bringing you in. Leaving the Earth is harder than coming down because the gravity will bring you in.
Both of these movies have the same preconception that to land a rocket, you do like the fancy go from sideways, rotate 90 degrees to face up, and then land downwards perfectly. Like a cartoon splash.
Oh, you mean the rocket facing
stuff like
down?
That.
Actually, I have something scientific about that. There's a series that I'm reading. The series is called The Expanse, and there's like 7 books. Basically, what you do is you fire your rockets at or fire your engine at a certain point, and then basically you stop. And it'll just keep coasting because a body in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force, Newtonian. So it goes. Now, when you're halfway, right? When you're halfway to your destination, the ship rotates the opposite direction and fires its rockets towards where it's going. And what that does is that slows it. It slows it down. You have to do something opposite of your velocity to slow down. You have to turn it around and so the rockets.
Yeah, if you're not using parachutes. Oh, by the way, in this cartoon, they have like 3 of them stacked on top of each other. Of course, they wouldn't do that.
Well, I'll tell you this. Is the Saturn V rocket when it launched up? It's mostly, it's mostly like just the fuel tank, and it's got the habitat portion of it at the top, or with the humans in it. Then there's pieces of it that come off. Of course, in the second movie, when they had some release of that the second movie that we're going to watch, we watched, they released it in stages. It's a 3-stage rocket. You got the bottom that comes off, and then the middle, and they separate off, and eventually they go into Earth's orbit and go through the atmosphere and get burned up. Sometimes they
Now that I think about it, yeah, I think Rocketship X-M would be like practically the only film to go, we're gonna do a multi-stage rocket.
And that's what they did in reality. Yeah, the other
Destination Moon didn't do that, but that movie did, and we would eventually do multi-stage.
Yeah, and
because it's like you don't need the long part, you just need the little part.
Right, it had it mostly right. Now another thing too, on another planet, if the gravity is what it is, like let's say on Mars, you would actually have to, whatever capsule is landing on Mars, you would have to do parachutes because it's pulling it in a little bit harder, and you have to, and you actually do have inflatable parts at the bottom of it. So if it bounces at all, then that's what happens.
Oh, sometimes they would do like a big make an inflatable shield around it that looks like a disc, looking like a plate.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Yeah. That's what they did for the rovers when they dropped the rovers.
But yeah, they would take the shuttle and jet off that part. I've seen Despicable Me 1. I know that you do that in order to get to your girls' dance recital and completely make it on time.
Gotta go to my girls' dance
recital. Yeah, he totally
recitals.
makes it on time to their dance recital and becomes a good dad in the process.
Yay, Gru.
Completely. They don't get captured at all.
So, anyway. the thing
Seriously,
is,
watch the movie. It's like when I think back on it, I'm like, it's so much better than anything Illumination would do next with it.
You're right.
It's so distinct in style.
As they're starting to get finished with the project, there are these protests against the launch, and the men are denied permission to test their atomic engine. They're like, you can't test this atomic device that could, wipe out a whole
the Human Torch was denied
city.
The bank loan. So that he couldn't turn into the Human
Torch was denied the bank loan. Yeah. So they said that this opposition, these protesters, the government is like making them protest or it's putting protesters kind of in there to gin it up. Which that's never happened before, right? That's happened recently. So specifically, they said, okay, we're going to take off without having the test. This will be our test. And we're like, uh-oh. But another obstacle comes in. There's always obstacles, but how you overcome them is what makes you, not just a scientist, but an explorer.
Yeah, one is gravity, and you're overcoming gravity, which is something we didn't think we could do before.
There's also the gravity
tiny little selves, a tiny little
There's a gravity. There's the internal gravity of appendicitis. Their radio guy, their communication, their comms guy, he gets appendicitis, which is, I actually had my appendix removed, so I know what this is. Now they're like, okay, what do we do? Well, he has an assistant who talks like Bugs Bunny, and his name is Joe Sweeney, played by comedian Dick Wesson. It's his first movie. I can see why. It may, I don't know if it's his last. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I feel like they got like a more experienced actor cast in the Rocketship X-M, the next movie.
True.
Than this one.
Yeah. But again, I kind of grow to, Joe Sweeney grows on me. Okay. So, but anyway, he thinks that the rocket's too heavy. It'll never leave Earth. And he's the comic relief, but actually it does work. Now, one thing is, this guy, Joe Sweeney, is a non-scientist. So every time something happens that he's like, this is crazy. And they're like, not so crazy, Joe. You see, science, you're weightless right now because of gravity.
He's the representation of the average Joe.
He's the average Joe Sweeney. That's great. That's Joe Six-Pack Sweeney.
Yeah.
He's
Beware
actually
the tale of Joe Sweeney. Todd.
Oh, Sweeney Todd.
His skin was pale
right.
and his eyes were odd. Seriously,
I
need to see one by that dude. Like literally,
it's
like
rough.
Les Mis.
It's really bloody. It's bloody and all that.
I need to see one thing by that director or Les Mis. Just
Sweeney Todd. Yes, we'll start with this. Les Mis is good too. Very, very, very.
Yeah,
good.
just Les Mis or anything else by that dude.
They launch it. There's a court order. I'll explain. There's a court order to shut them all down, but they arrive too late. because they're like, "Oh, we can't hear you. We're going up the thing." And they're like, "Stop! I've got this sheet of paper. You come back." And I'm like, "Nice try."
Yeah, he's literally just, "I'm sorry you can't do that. Can you launch over in the Pacific Ocean, like the Philippines or something?"
Right. They said launch in another area, and they're like, "No, it would take too much to get there, and no, we can't do that." The launch is successful.
Let's talk about the inner design of the ship for a moment.
It's not exactly like what the Apollo mission looked like.
The command center is a bunch of beds.
Yes,
they sit on a bunch of beds, which I guess is, while practical, it's like in the movie when they count down, they strap in and they're just laying back, reclining, and I was like,
but wait, there's one thing this movie did, the other movie did not, and I don't know how they did it or if they just acted like this, but there's intense gravitation, G-forces,
they stretch their mouths out.
Yeah, I've seen footage of astronauts that get on. It's called I don't know if it's called the Vomit Comet or no. The Vomit Comet is the ship, the airplane that they fly up, and it has a big open area in the back, and they dive, and the rate of falling equals.
That's like one of the things where they spin around and then you can float, except on a way more expensive and scary level.
That's how they filmed the movie Apollo 13. The movie Apollo 13, they filmed it doing multiple runs of the Vomit Comet with the whole set was built inside the airplane. So they did real floating around, and and some stuff that they
and
put
I think there were some
CGI.
Music videos filmed like that too.
Absolutely, there is. Yeah, and it's if you've seen people on these, and we
they don't. It's like if you want to write a song about someone who you love doesn't see the gravity of the situation, they want to pull out, but they don't see the gravity of the situation.
Right.
That's what Vomit Comet.
Exactly.
Anyway, they go up to space and they can see the blue marble. And there.
Yes,
no one takes photos of it though. They would take other photos.
They are weightless, and they actually I think what they do is they actually filmed the set sideways, or they did it sideways. So because Joe,
I think it was a Fred Astaire film that did that.
Yeah, he dances on
like
the ceiling.
51.
So exactly. There's a similar effect where they have him sitting sideways. They couldn't fully do weightlessness. They did pretty good. They kind of acted a little weightless, and some of it they had maybe wires on them.
By the way, according to the movie, the rocket's made out of titanium. Is titanium magnetic? No. Does it not rust? Yes. Which is why they built it out of titanium. That's why we use titanium.
Once we get to the Godzilla movies in the 1970s, we're going to talk about space titanium.
We make a big giant magnet to swing in the rocket ship. And if we see that in a movie, we're like, it's made out of titanium.
What about the inside that they actually? Because they get on the out. I'm about to get to that. They get on the outside of the rocket. Anyway,
it's not like a nail to the giant magnet. It's the titanium. Oh, first of all, in the interior, like they have eating a banana and then playing a harmonica.
Right. The harmonica.
Very masculine things, obviously.
No, that's fine. No, listen to this. I've heard that when
the other movie played harmonica too.
That's right.
Why
did
they both
let's talk
do that?
about music. Let's talk about one.
What a coincidence.
Music in space. They're inside
air.
the rocket, so you can hear it. There's air inside the rocket. Anyway, the point is, here's the thing. Okay, we are going to Mars. Not fictionally, for real. And they are actually people are actually in a Mars simulation. They're actually out in the desert with these biohabitats, and they've got suits on, and they are actually acting like they are going to Mars, and they're seeing what it would be like. And one of the things they talked about was they wanted people that were very well-rounded, that they had skills, talents beyond just being scientific. They got to be able to communicate with people well. They got to be able to resolve conflicts. Look, if conflict happens on another planet and you're just in your team, it's life and death. It's the future of mankind. But they also said if somebody plays the guitar, or somebody plays the harmonica or sings or whatever, can perform. Those are actually skills they look at when they look at a team to go to another planet. Think about this.
Social skills.
Yeah.
None
and
of which
not
I
only
have.
that, okay, here's the thing. You are led about, you're led by your psyche, by your brain. And if you are at peace.
I don't think lead is magnetic either.
Not that kind of lead.
Just a random
I mean,
thought.
No, I think it is. Is it? Okay, if you're led about by your psyche and your mind.
Can you be led by lead? Magnetically?
You can be in space and lose it. I mean, you're on another planet. You don't see anything that you're used to.
And no gravity. It over time it will affect your body. I think there's some people stuck in space right now. I did hear news that there was some people stuck in space right now longer than they needed to be.
Yes.
And it's it's going to affect their bodies. But they're we can't do anything about it.
Well, whenever the
You're
astronauts got back from the moon mission, they actually had to be quarantined because they didn't know if they brought back anything from space. Plus, they had to do rehabilitation, get your muscles going. In fact, on the ship and also in the space lab, they actually have exercise equipment. They had an exercise bike, and they've got wires that you put, kind of like row machines or whatever like that.
Speaking of wires that you pull, they go outside because the satellite dish is frozen. And then I was like, well,
why
if
is
you're
it
in
frozen?
orbit,
Why is it
isn't
frozen?
it facing
It's
the
Joe's
sun,
fault.
or can you not face the sun?
No, it's Joe's fault. Because what Joe did is I greased it down. I put grease on. They're like, Joe, you idiot. The grease would would freeze in space because there's nothing to stop, the escape of heat.
As well as the Blu-ray.
Out of space.
As well as the Blu-ray of Grease the movie. That would also freeze in space. Don't believe me? Try it yourself. Take it to space. Put it in space.
Go grease satellite. You're greasing up the ship. Oh, yeah. That's so bad. No, leave it in. Leave it in. I'm not embarrassed of myself. So anyway, they actually have to go out and fix this. And but one of the guys, he's focused. He's not paying attention. His feet come off of the ship and he starts floating away. But he's
on a string. As is obvious. All the astronauts are obviously on strings in these close-up shots. They don't even mask any of the strings really, except for
they've got
when
to
they throw a lasso.
But it's not enough. It's not enough. And the one guy gets the idea to go get like an extinguisher and use it as propellant. And I was watching this going, that's like WALL-E with the
it is a bit. Make sure you don't you angle the bottle the wrong way, you'll start spinning just like WALL-E does. But he happens to perfectly be able to land back on the ship.
That's a great scene from WALL-E. Anyway, he gets him.
Wait, also, I think you can see a crew member helping the astronauts outside of the hatch at the beginning of this scene. But yeah, otherwise...
Oh, you mean like a movie, like a guy that works in the movie?
Yeah, that's part of some of the jank with some of the effects are
That's going to happen.
Off, but it's they're very creative. And honestly, for representing zero gravity and having an idea of it, I think they got a Oscar for special effects.
Okay, so also now we get to the moon, right?
They were great.
So and I think this movie is shorter than Rocketship X-M. But anyway, the designs for the moon and for space and everything like that come from an artist named Chesley Bonestell.
Yeah,
right?
I think he did Orson Welles films, like Citizen Kane.
Did he also work on 2001: A Space Odyssey?
I didn't see.
No, I don't know, but I do know that that they actually in Star Trek: The Next Generation they had a station called Bonestell Station or something, or USS Bonestell. They do that all the time. They give little nods.
So what does the moon look like? It's more mountainous than we would see it to be.
Oh, it's got a lot of cracks.
Cracks in the floor.
Yeah.
Which is okay, obviously
don't step on one.
In the floor.
If you step on one of those, you'll kill every mother on Earth. That's how that works.
Or grandmother, depending on which
your
one you follow.
Your great grandma, because the moon's really old. No, I don't know.
Step on a crack, break your grandma's back.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing about the moon. It's it's got more craters than this has.
Yeah, I guess you've got it's an effective way to teach children how to avoid cracks. It's very effective.
Don't. I think they were addicted to crack when they. No, I'm kidding. They were addicted to painting cracks on the set. Anyway, they got there. Now, one thing. Okay, here's one thing that I thought was kind of cool. And NASA, when they did the first Apollo mission, they did not do this. Is they had their suits color coded, blue, orange, red.
So you
whatever.
can see each other.
Yeah.
Even
you know
if
what
they look like Teletubbies.
And here's the thing. I think that I mean, if I had James Gunn, the director James Gunn, if I had him here and asked him, he directed the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. In the third Guardian of the Galaxy movies, they're going to that meat station, that station made out of meat or whatever it is, and they jump out of the ship to that song by it's called "In the Meantime" by Space Hog, and they're in different colored suits, and I was like, that's where James Gunn took that from. I mean, and I think so. I would. But color coded suits, that's also Star Trek in feel to me. But in NASA, all the suits for the moon mission and any other mission we've done have all been like white or gray. White, gray, you know. If for the Mars missions and for future missions, they're actually going to make them more interesting to look at and more aesthetically pleasing. I don't know if they're going to make them like Teletubby colors, but
I
hate
just
to say this, it's
imagine
kinda
someone
awesome.
putting a tub of tubby custard on the moon, and then I was like,
Well,
is someone gonna put that? Someone
does that mean the
don't
sun-
leave the
the
vacuum
sun-
on the moon,
the sun is a baby's face.
and the moon is a giant vacuum. All right,
Right.
So what do they do there? They leap really high,
Which is
very
true, which-
specific times. They don't
1/6
otherwise.
Earth's gravity, so they were right. Again, that's another
But they wouldn't they
anti-cinema
wouldn't
sin
jump
for this movie.
high as much as far, unless like I think a guy like gives one of the others a boost so that he can jump, and then he's like knock it off. Oh, they do contact Earth, which said it took 3 seconds of delay, which the moon is 1.25 light seconds away. I looked up, so the response time would be more like 2.5 round trip. So still, it's not exactly accurate.
Okay.
Or 2.25. I haven't done
well,
calculation in my head.
yeah. No, that's hey.
Would any of
you're-
these movies, two movies, obey the delay, though? Of course not. They speak almost instantly.
Yeah,
But they're 3 seconds away.
Yeah, and but the Expanse series that actually they made a series on Amazon with it. They do a thing where they it's almost like email, right? You record your entire statement, sometimes leaving little small spaces for the person to answer, and you keep going, and then you send the entire thing to them, and they record their response back. Well, they record their. It's almost like
a
an
buffer
email.
strategy.
Well, it's almost like you're emailing an MP4 to somebody or like a video file. It's really what it is. You're sending a video file, and then they send their response back. And there's like sometimes there can be even like 40 minutes of delay. And that causes issues.
They did have to sacrifice a lot in order to get video of the Armstrong on the moon.
Yes, absolutely.
But they did
and
like live on television,
Yeah.
And that was crazy.
Yeah, it was.
But anyway,
And, yeah.
what happens when they get on the moon and they're too heavy to make it back?
Yes.
They have to put everything outside, and
They have to lose 1,000 pounds to compensate.
and one
and
of them is like, well,
This was
I'm
really
technically
tense.
100 of them.
Well, this was really tense, and so what they did is they went through and they're cutting everything off. This is a really good scene. I mean,
And then he's like,
going,
I have to leave.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
this
one
is a
of the-
betrayal
they-
moment.
Yeah. Well, honestly, this is what made. Well, this is what made
the
Sacrifice.
Magic School Bus. Arnold taking the suit of the helmet off, which actually, funnily enough, it does almost look like he takes off his suit and then goes outside and then drags the suit back in. And I was like, did he go outside with it? I don't think he did, but I'm not sure. on that.
he did. He did go outside, but then what he did is he went inside, and then they put the. I don't know exactly how they managed to make it where they could have Joe come back. I mean, of the two movies, this movie is more afraid of showing you any kind of death of a character. The second movie, we'll get into it. They get down, like you said, they need 110 pounds lost. They're like, we can't let you do that, Joe. You're the plucky comic relief, and and we don't want to lose anybody. And and they do everything they can. They make this little plan to do it, and they do it. And when they're it's a very triumphant. And when they're finally launching into space, they look down at the Earth, and it's a real good moment. And then the movie says, "This is the end
of the beginning."
And I was like, "Oh," but they had no idea how prophetic that is.
Going to space was the entire fantasy. Like, it's a very simple film in that aspect, but it's not for the time. They didn't think any of that would happen at all.
No,
but it would in 19 years. So
1969, and
so
I think it was on,
let's get into the production of this movie real quick before the next one.
Yeah.
George Powell, producer, had 2 contracts for Eagle Lion Films. He was a puppeteer animator at Paramount, I think.
Oh, the Puppetoons.
Yeah, he got an honorary Oscar. I did not write down the exact movie. Whoops.
Right.
He did the first of the 2 contracts was The Great Rupert, which was the stop-motion squirrel.
Oh.
And it had Jimmy Durante in there. And it flopped.
Cha-cha-cha-cha, Jimmy Durante, cha-cha-cha. Sorry, that's a terrible Durante impression.
It flopped as much as your impression.
Yeah.
So then he went, I'm going to hire Irving Pischel, who we saw from Dracula's Daughter. I think we talked all about him.
We talked about the House Un-American Activities Committee tried to get him or something, and he would never.
And that would be about this time in the 50s or 60s, yeah.
Right. Oh, right. And he was the Princess Zaleska. No, right. What was her name? Dracula's Daughter's henchman.
I'm pretty sure you're about on the money.
Yeah, he was the henchman guy. I remember him. Yeah, go ahead.
Given fairly low budget of $500,000, compared to Paramount High, it's fairly low, but it's fairly in the middle. But fairly low compared to some of the things they might want to do, but not way too low, as we'll see in the next one. Written by Robert A. Heinlein, who wrote The Man Who Sold the Moon, which is a book that follows a similar plot.
Yes.
He was Sci-Fi advisor. They also asked Herman Oberth, who was Fritz Lang's advisor on Woman on the Moon. That film was the originator of the idea for the space launch as we know it today, even the countdown. We talked about that in an earlier episode.
There's a Star Trek. There's a Star Trek class of ships called the Oberth class ships. You see, Star Trek did that too. So yeah,
it was the Oberth of a nation of space.
No, wait a minute. Robert Heinlein also wrote Starship Troopers, and he also he did another book that was very similar about moon landing or moon action. It was called The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I definitely recommend it. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. It's very good. Go ahead.
He also advised the Adventures of Tintin comic, Destination Moon, in 1953. Which, honestly, makes me want to read the Adventures of Tintin. I mean, why not? Classic series.
Some of them are questionable race relations, as far as questionable how they show Asian people or African people.
That's all back then.
You kind of have to go, okay. But Steven Spielberg did a Tintin CGI movie.
Yeah, they didn't have great archetypes of those people back then.
No, but I think the Tintin movie that Spielberg did wasn't racist.
Wasn't that what they did? They did the Pan Express, the Polar Express thing.
Yeah, it was a similar style, but I like the way it looks better than Polar Express. But
they heavily advertised this movie in magazines, sort of like in the Woody Woodpecker cartoon where they talked about Life magazine and stuff, which I think would actually be the only magazine that survives today is Life magazine.
Yes, Life is still around.
Mentioned.
Yeah,
but it's not a weekly magazine anymore, like they say. The weekly magazines. They put a little inkling into people's minds that all this might be possible in the magazines. And I think they spent $1 million on the advertising. But yeah, the acceleration, they glued flesh-colored fabric on their faces to pull their faces back. They didn't do the same for their clothes, though.
Oh,
which
okay.
would have been a little bit more realistic.
Okay,
they put the fishing line and attached it to the beds. Destination Moon was the first film to have a computer in it, UCLA's differential analyzer. And yeah, this is the first Grace Stafford Woody voice. She would do. I guess a couple more of those would be like the new voice. I think.
I know more the newer voice than the Grace Stafford voice. So I was kind of like, I didn't recognize the voice too much.
So in short, I again, this movie might be like, a bit boring from, future hindsight, but like for back then, it's pretty good. And then the Woody Woodpecker cartoon, I was like up a bit more. It does take like half the movie to get into space and then half the movie to only barely be on the moon.
It's quick. Yeah. Now the other movie,
movie on the other hand,
they get into space quick.
Fairly quick. They spend a lot of the movie in the spaceship though. So how does this movie start? They start with, again, the shareholders. They're going like, they don't tell them. They don't have them sign an NDA. They just ask, would you please keep all the information that you
they've got reporters
to the ones in these papers?
Well, they got reporters there. All the American news services are already there.
Please keep the information to what is inside the pamphlets and none other that we share. NDA. Make them sign an NDA. Like, seriously.
Right. So the name of the
they
rocket...
even do this again later on. They're like, this weird thing happened, but make sure that all of this has been kept in this paper. No, make them sign an NDA if you're gonna have information that you're going to tell them that you want to keep secret. A non-disclosure agreement. Simple as that. Don't make a non-disclosure. Ask them nicely.
You've got to do it. Well, there was an honor system, I think. There was like, this is America, Yeah,
but I was seriously like, why not just make them sign an NDA?
All the news reporter services are there, and they didn't sign an NDA.
Yep.
And they're saying within minutes, a manned rocket called the RX-M will be launched into space, and its destination is the moon. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. It just happened. So this is Dr. Fleming is explaining it, and he introduces the leader, who is the ship designer and a physicist. He's like one of the math guys that does calculations. His name is Dr. X-M. X-M has an assistant. Now she's not just a woman. How dare you? She's more than a woman. She's a chemist. Her name is Dr. Lisa Van Horn.
The one thing, they do with this movie is she is constantly the character subject to sexism, which I did not expect in any of these movies.
Ouch.
The crew is a bunch of archetypes right off the bat. They throw a lighter
super
tone on
masculine
everything.
dudes.
And this one woman character, the entire purpose of her.
And the most masculine dude is Colonel Floyd Graham, played by famous actor Lloyd Bridges. I've seen tons of Lloyd Bridges movies. Well, okay, half a ton.
He wasn't sexist, I think, in Airplane.
Oh, Airplane. He played McCroskey, the guy who works the air traffic control station.
What was his famous line? I think he had one.
He said it, but he said, "I picked the wrong week to stop doing amphetamines," and then he throws some in his back and drinks some water. There was a guy in there named Stryker, and he's like, "What's that guy's name? Stryker,
William?
Stryker." No. He goes, Stryker, and this guy behind him hits a woman in the face. So stupid. The movie is okay. Anybody that thinks Airplane is like a really brilliant movie is dumb, because the movie's dumb, and it's
it's like that in The Golden Gun, where like
the Naked Gun.
The Naked Gun, excuse me.
No, it was similar guy.
I was thinking of the man with the golden gun. Sorry.
Oh, that's
the Naked Gun.
007.
Those two, 60s comedy, up the coots. 80s comedy. My mistake.
Sorry. Or one of them was late 70s, early 80s, or was it just? I think it was early.
That's
80s.
where I got. I think it was late 70s, and I was like, is that late 60s?
Yeah.
Let me remember that it's the late 60s instead.
So there's another guy. Harry Chamberlain and the engineer Major William Corrigan. I don't know them from anything. I just remember one of the guy kept talking about Texas. He was looking down. They looked down at Earth after they launched, and he's like, the guy's
they both have Texans.
Texas, yeah, exactly.
Except one of them is part of the crew.
And
does harmonica.
Texas, he goes. Texas looks like a space. He goes, don't ever say that about Texas again. I'm like, dude. That whole.
Doesn't one time he's like, "Oh, this spaceship is so hot," and he's wearing a leather jacket.
Yeah, and he's like, well, it's not
It's as
bad
hot
as
as Texas in here. You're wearing your leather jacket. Take it off.
everything gets compared to Texas. Anyway, back to this is
Why
before
can't zero gravity just lift it right off of you and it feels so much better?
So
Anyway,
the Rocketship X-M is a 2-stage vehicle. It's designed to reach the moon with the aid of a slingshot effect of the Earth's gravity.
they would do a little bit of that with like a couple rocket ships in history.
Yes, but you might as well. The Earth's gravity is pretty powerful. You've got use it to your benefit instead of your detriment. That's what I say.
Also, some of the things of their plan is they did say the perigee was 238,000, and I looked it up, and I was like, the perigee is like 226,000 at most. Like, even though it fluctuates, like, part of the year, it never reaches like 230 at all.
Thank you, Commander Data.
Second fact.
I appreciate that.
William
No, that's
Riker.
wonderful.
Also,
that's
the trip
wonderful.
at a generous 300 miles per hour, which would likely be rockets are likely 2 times as fast as that. I like halved it.
Yeah,
roughly.
300. You got to do quite a bit
3,000
more
miles an hour would take 7.5 hours to travel to 22,500 miles, which would be about the perigee.
Okay.
226.
Okay, so
that is to say
yeah.
that even like at a generous speed, they say that they're gonna take 2 days to make this trip, I think, and then it's like, well, it would have even at 1,000 miles an hour, that would be 22.5. You'd make it. I mean, I know the Apollo space mission was like roughly 2/3 of that of those 48 hours, but they could make it. They could make it in a day.
Well, what is it? Is it 1,000 miles an hour? It's like 1,000 to 1,200 is like Mach 1.
Even a Mach 1 rocket ship.
No, Mach is slow compared to what you have to reach.
1,000 miles an hour, they wouldn't be able to make it out. So
yeah, you've got to really
you'd be
push
able
hard.
to make it out to the perigee in a day.
Yeah. So one of the things they were talking about is our attempt is to be the first nation. We know other nations are going to try
Also,
this.
300 miles is an accurate number for the beginning of the exosphere. They said the beginning of the exosphere is 300 miles.
So
and
they
I
were
was like, that's an accurate number.
So that was scientifically correct, Mr.
Well,
Cinnamon
because
Sins over here.
likely because they had measured it with airplanes at the time. So
Oh, okay. Well, they're trying to get a base on the moon because on the moon, if somebody's going to
conquest
launch
from aliens. You never
Right.
know. That was one of these films. Is they're like, you could be invaded by aliens, and you never know. That might have been Destination Moon, but I'm not exactly sure.
Well, they didn't. Little did they know, but the aliens would be around
You never
in like
know when you
less
can be
than 3
invaded.
years. In less than 3 years, there was going to be alien movies all over the place.
I think they talk about while on the spaceship flight that there's an equilibrium point where the two planets' gravity are balanced. Because he's like, oh, why am I not X floating or whatever? And it's like, I don't think there's any equilibrium point where they are balanced because, okay, first of all, both of these movies think that gravity stops way farther than it does in real life. They think, like, in between the planets, you still have a little bit of gravity.
I wonder if they did that so that they wouldn't have to do the whole weightless floating thing all the time.
It's a bit worse in this movie, but the previous movie did
Yeah.
also go like, gravity disappears further than it would. We get them.
They had them floating around.
Starts floating.
Yeah, and but here's the thing is when people say 0G, that is actually a misnomer. It's actually very minuscule. I will tell you, William, before we started the episode, I did try to go over to the research and sponsor programs where I work. There's a research and sponsor programs group, and they do, scientific research.
Ask around for some of these details. Yeah,
I asked around for somebody who was an expert in the atmospheric pressure of Mars. But I ended up just looking that
would
up.
come into key like later.
I ended up looking that stuff up
If we want to sum
anyway.
this up a little, basically, they make it on the space. I do think they like all faint for some reason.
Okay, the mixture's wrong. So there's a whole thing
the whole thing where like they transfer the tanks around.
Dr.
like
Ekstrom,
ion
and
batteries from Subnautica.
Lisa Van Horn, the lady,
Or in your
scientist,
remote control.
they have like an argument over. Well, I think my my calculations are correct. Well, I think your calculation. Well, we can only try one. And she gets upset, and he goes.
Yeah, hers
well,
is incorrect, and
I'll
his is
excuse
right.
you for being. You were
well, he's
temporarily a
sleeping.
woman. You're emotional. Like what? This is
apologies
so
for being a woman. Yeah, and then he goes to bed. She tries to steal his planes, but she's like, "Oh, I can't because it's under his arm. So why don't you, will be the eventual love interest, comes to take this?" Because they talk about, oh, I love beautiful things out in the world to explore where I live in Switzerland and whatever. The lady says, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we could go there together."
Around a lake, walking
That's
around a lake.
the only romance that they have.
Well,
only romance that they
well,
have.
if you think that you're about to kick the bucket, I think that sometimes that can people.
Also, I forgot to mention the interior of the ship. Basically, they do add command chairs. They also have the bed things, and there's more rooms in there to show in the movie, which I was like, that's a plus for this movie.
I like the design of the Luna better than I like this. The design
and
of this
there's a bigger
ship.
cast to throw more, sciencey words around and stuff.
Oh, we do see asteroids at one point go by. It looked like styrofoam packing peanuts flying in space. But anyway, like you said, they faint.
But the one thing is, though, gravity is literally just pulling some random object on a string, but very specific ones. Not even everything. Not even, like, anything sitting on
the jacket.
tables or whatever.
Right, didn't the jacket float? And they were like, you should float too.
Like, the harmonica flies off or something, and then there's, like, a couple the things, like, going, like, bounced with strings, like they do with the puppets. And it's, like marionettes. And it's, like, the other movie did Zero Gravity a lot better.
Yeah, and they did it better because they could kind of turn, they made him sit sideways.
This movie actually had way less of a budget, and we'll talk about later why.
I heard something about this movie and the other movie and what order they came in, what they were able to get to theater. Yeah, that's interesting. I want you to tell me about that, a little bit more about that. I heard something. I think you might know about that.
Yeah, but then they're like, we have to transfer the tanks around, the various drama, like, we're not actually moving in space, and, send 12% O3 to A16. Are they powering the ship with ozone, was my first thought, because O3?
No, it's probably, no, isn't it liquid oxygen?
Capture
O3?
it from the ozone layer, put it in, like...
Well, there actually is liquid.
Tearing a hole in the ozone layer.
There's liquid oxygen. There's liquid oxygen on the moon too. So you could actually. That's one reason why they're looking at the moon
there's not like
as
a pool
possible
of liquid oxygen.
No. I'm saying it's frozen. It's frozen. So what you could, I think that one reason they were talking about the moon being a really good way station, for to go from the moon to other planets, like be a nice little pit stop launching pad, is because the gravity's less, and you could make liquid oxygen rocket fuel from the frozen liquid oxygen on the moon. Or is it Mars? I don't remember which one had the liquid oxygen on it. Anyway, back to this. They all faint. Dr. Van Horn is the first one to wake up. She wakes everybody else up, and Dr. Ekstrom notices that they are not at the moon. They're at Mars.
And why that is because a body moving in unchecked velocity in free space is infinite motion. Generally infinite motion as there's no friction, but not incorrect. I was like, well, yeah, there's no friction, but not a body moving with unchecked velocity in free space. What is free space? What is unchecked velocity? What is parallel flight? They would call orbiting parallel flight in this movie, and I was like, since when? Parallel flight. Like I know it's parallel to the surface of the planet, but still. You do know it's a sphere, right? You are sort of orbiting the planet, and they did say that in the other movie, so they did know that, right?
But Mars, okay, let's give some facts about Mars real quick. Mars has is certain times, because of its orbit, closer to Earth, and sometimes farther away because of the distance that it orbits. So it could be anywhere between 55.7 million kilometers or 401 million kilometers from Earth. A really good launch window to Mars from Earth would be every 26 months, which is basically 2 years and 2 months.
I do think if at this point you're knocked out and that ship is floating along, I don't think you could easily pass it, or you could we don't know how long. One plus this movie, that's actually a scary situation.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we've been floating out in space, and we're not like, or we didn't like hyperspace to where we need to go.
We can't get back. Okay, so using current technology, it would take over 2 years for a team of astronauts to travel to Mars and back. That's current technology, not 1950 conjectural sci-fi technology. So they were going for a year? I don't know. The way that it shows the
I mean, there was like a part
mission
where it's
control.
like, oh, we're not moving, and you think you're moving, but you're not moving. I don't know where that went, but like,
No, the mission
doesn't
control
make sense at all.
people. The mission control people back on Earth, they're kind of all at attention still. So it almost seems like this trip they've been going at super fast velocity to get to Mars. They went to Mars really fast. I'm like, oh, okay, that's some sci-fi element.
but yeah,
there.
the one thing though about this movie is you do get more like shots of the outside of the planet and stuff like that. There's this while they're landing, they rotate separately from the outside because you see like the windows disappear and appear, where they do their their fancy turn 90 degrees and then land with the bottom.
Yeah, but how did they slow down? Did they just turn the accelerator off? No, you would have overshot. You would have overshot Mars. And then you'd have to turn the ship, face the rockets in the opposite direction to brake. You have to brake your velocity. So the fact that they hit right on Mars is yeah. You can see how this movie is not scientifically
Another
accurate.
thing is they said reduced thrust by 50 tons. I was like, is tons what thrust is measured in? Yeah. They
Yes.
measure thrust in newtons, which is weight. So yeah, I was like, huh.
It's force. Yeah, force.
50 tons of force.
That's true.
Well, weight, which is what thrust is measured in. It's
Right.
timey-wimey stuff.
So the only other planet in the solar system remotely capable of supporting life, even for a short time, Mars.
Or California.
Yeah, they filmed it in the desert.
They filmed it in Death
Death
Valley.
Valley. Yeah, Death Valley.
They filmed it in Death Valley, which when you look up a picture of it, that's definitely Death Valley because of the sand dunes are very iconic.
I actually do have footage directly from the rover, the Mars rover, that
It's
that I
probably
can
all
put-
flat, isn't it?
No, but it's very interesting to look at. It's actually I've got some footage from a lake bed, a riverbed that had dried up many years ago. It's like been dry for a long time, eons. So the sky, okay, the way they did this is it was
They
the movie's
painted it red,
not
and then
the-
it was
that they did
matte
the best they
paintings
can.
of the rocket and like generic mountains.
They did the best they can. Okay, so but I saw in the pictures, it looks like a very overcast day, with a kind of pinkish sky, and a kind of a rocky ground. Okay. One misconception about Mars is these dust storms. Yes, there are dust storms, but the wind think of the dust as almost like a baby powder. A fineness, almost like a fineness like baby powder. And actually that's what killed the last rover in Mars just recently, is a dust storm caked so much dust over the solar panels on top of the rover that
Couldn't
it
get
couldn't
sun.
recharge. Yeah. Do you remember Wally, whenever he had to he opened up his his solar panel?
He ran with Apple technology.
Yeah, Apple Tech. Yeah.
Have they not made?
It's by and
Have
large.
they not made solar panels yet? Like a brand, they should do that.
There are different brands of solar panel. There are different companies that make that.
But yeah, not like Apple. They don't do like the iPhone and the iPad and the iPod and the solar panel.
Right. Well, hey,
They'll workshop.
I think Google or SpaceX will probably do that next. Probably Google does everything like that. So anyway, back to this.
But yeah, they're traveling along with these like gas masks, and they see. First of all,
No
they
goggles.
see this tiki-looking head. Yeah, they don't have goggles on.
Stop. Wait 1 second. There's no goggles. So yes, they do need oxygen because Mars is like 96% carbon dioxide.
Oh yeah, your eyes are gonna get all fried in.
Your
eyes are gonna get
the pressure is your eyes will start
I didn't
to
mean
bug
literal
out.
fry. I meant
It reminds me of
Going
Well,
to
there was a
Fritz.
movie. There was a movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger did called Total Recall, and there's a couple scenes where characters get thrown out without a spacesuit.
How good is Total Recall?
Into Mars? The first one's good. The scene they used practical
I've heard
effects.
it's a good movie.
Yeah, the remake is not. They used practical effects to show characters, getting affected by the pressure and suffocating, and their eyes like, and their eyes are bugging out, and they're using.
They're doing the mask.
It looks
type
rough.
thing.
It looks rough, but kind of cool. And basically, there's a scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger gets thrown out into Mars. There's an alien machine or something that he starts the reactor, Quaid. He starts the reactor, and it actually busts these pockets of oxygen, of breathable air underneath the surface of Mars, and it sprays the clouds out. And so for a moment, him and his girlfriend are going, in Arnold's special way that he does, and he's dying. And the air finally, as the air starts to change the atmosphere of Mars, his eyeballs like shrink into normal, and he stops suffocating. So, but yeah, you would suffocate. You have to hold your breath, but it's really hard to do because of the pressure. And your ears would pop. Your ears would pop, and you would only be able to get maybe 5 seconds from one location to another without a helmet. I doubt you'd be able to survive very long. But anyway,
you have to cover your whole face. But anyway, basically, they're here. They do have like some weapons. They're like, oh, there's pitch blend here because they're all hot for the pitch blend because radioactivity is the new hot thing. And,
when did we talk about when did we talk about pitch blend?
Dr. Cyclops.
Dr. Cyclops, yeah, see?
Boom,
see?
on the money.
Trivia. Yeah. I'm glad you remembered that. That was a good episode. I enjoyed that. Anyway, back to this. So he finds a tiki mask.
A tiki looking mask. Yeah. I was like, okay. I mean, like, why does it look like that?
It's from the ancient species of Huckapelle.
So Next up, we meet some aliens.
I can do the references.
Guess what they
I can
don't
do the
sound
backyard
like.
goods references.
Boinga boinga is not what they sound like. Because we're at it again with the backyard against references.
Zum zum.
You know how much I was not trying so hard not to sing "We're going to Mars."
Oh right, yeah. No,
it's so fun. The whole
yes, it is.
Episode.
We're gonna have to do that again.
I think it's the start to a season, but yeah, like that was the first time the Backyardigans went to Mars, and that's when they upgraded everything with the Backyardigans in terms of the scope of what they did.
But who brought these astronauts to Mars? God, because he says some divine providence must have found some way to get us here to this planet to discover this. Yeah, it wasn't like an actual whoop-de-doo accident. It was
the aliens
God.
Are Tusken Raiders in this movie, and then
they're like some of them are blind.
They're not gray Martians, which they were sort of like. Are these going to be like the gray Martians?
Right.
Which was, of course, H.G. Wells originated that. The Man in the Moon movie that we talked about that didn't. We don't have that today, but they sort of look like that. They went to. That was about like before a trip to the moon. And that's where they saw like some of the aliens in there.
Well, this used to be an advanced civilization, and
the Gray Martian thing would pick up in like '65, which I think like the Outer Limits TV show was running about then, and that's where it would pick up.
Oh, you're talking about the Greys? Well, they did green men from Mars. People used to say green men from the planet Mars, like they were green. No, they're human-like.
Yeah, the gray aliens is what I'm talking about specifically. But the gray and the green would both sprout in this time.
Yes. And well, they're
Tusken Raiders. They shoot at them. They go into a cave, which has a terrible background matte painting in it, and then they're like, oh, what are we gonna do about this?
No, wait a minute. Did they sleep overnight?
I think so. I don't remember.
All right, here we go.
This part of the movie was very boring because it was just them walking around most of the time.
The average temperature can be like 70 to 80 degrees during the day. It can be. But at night, because the atmosphere is so thin, it can't keep the heat in, and it just escapes during the night. When the sun's not shining, right?
Interesting. So it's hotter at night.
It's colder at night.
Oh, whoopsies.
It's super cold. Yeah, it's negative.
That would not be good. No.
Negative 100 degrees Celsius, which is about
that would not be good.
Negative 200 something. So they're just like, we're just. Well, some of them have like bare arms, that they're showing, and like their necks are showing. I'm like, dude, you would get frostbite.
As well as firearms, because basically to sum up this section, they're just wandering around. They're like, the aliens.
But wait a minute,
they're primitive. There was like this lady with glazed over eyes that they found.
She was
on
blind
the ground.
because they destroyed themselves. Here's the thing, William.
Yeah, they did talk about going from the space age to the Stone Age.
Atomic age to Stone Age. Yeah, they bombed themselves into oblivion. And Dr.
What an idea.
Dr. Ekstrom basically goes, well, this sounds like Star Trek, doesn't it? Well, Dr. Ekstrom, he goes, well, that after the atomic, bomb blast and things like that many of the people were blinded, their eyes. And so it's like he just knows what happened here. The tribesmen attack. They're throwing They're throwing axes. And stone axes and throwing large rocks.
They do eventually escape from the planet fairly hastily at this point.
Major Corrigan gets killed by a large rock thrown.
Oh yeah, he does get killed.
Dr. Ekstrom is killed by a stone axe.
It's only the girl and it's only the lovebirds survive.
Yes. Navigator Chamberlain is badly injured.
Oh, and he's injured.
They take him back and they give him a pill to knock him out or something. They strap him down and just say, it'll be all right, buddy.
And so they're going back to Earth. But guess how the movie ends?
Badly. I mean,
they don't. No fuel. So they die. They crash in Nova Scotia. And then the mission control, who was previously
they're able to tell them what happened. Yeah.
They were like, whelp. But now we know that even though it was a failure, that we still got things.
Well, they said we're gonna have
clues to the salvation of the Earth.
RXM number 2. We'll launch
seriously,
next.
Man?
The sequel. We're gonna launch the sequel rocket.
And also, what clues to the salvation of Earth? They didn't even say the Martians existed.
No. They did. No. Wait. 1 second. We didn't hear it. What it was is you see the guy and he's listening, and they're playing dramatic music. He's able to, he or she.
Yeah. By the way, this movie is very half the time serious, half the time not, and like throwing things at the wall to see what sticks.
Yes.
Acting like the plot is actually like interesting when it's not really. Ultimately,
it's
interesting on paper, but not on execution.
Hey, it's our first like legit science fiction era stuff. So I'm not
talk
looking...
about why, but can you finish your sentence first?
Well, what I was going to say real quick is he was talking to the radio operator and telling him all this stuff, and they didn't let us, the audience, hear what he was saying, but you kind of know because the guy turned.
Them?
Yeah, he told him about and he said, that they bombed themselves in oblivion, and he goes, you know what? This was a failure, and he goes, no, this wasn't a failure. We learned, what happened to these other people's exist,
and we wouldn't do that again.
Yeah.
Which is a big theme of this movie is nuclear warfare and the effects of radioactivity.
We're going to see that a lot in the 50s, man.
Yeah.
The fear of war,
and this theme
the
would
fear
be
of the atomic age.
Prevalent, I don't know. I would maybe half recommend watching Barefoot Gen. If you want some of that theming really well done.
What is it called?
Barefoot Gen or Jen. Or the Ghibli movie about the Fireflies.
Oh, Grave of the Fireflies. Yeah, that's on Netflix right now. Actually,
you can watch that one as well. But Barefoot Gen has a lot more heartbreaking scenes about nuclear warfare.
Grave of the Fireflies is infamous for making just the most hardened, unemotional person weep like a baby. So
yeah, but Barefoot Gen came first, and so give that one a watch for. Historical. It's, obviously as or maybe even more horrifying than Grave of the Fireflies, but
Oh, also
your,
Chernobyl.
for your journey along with
about
us
the
in
about the
film
dangers of nuclear
study.
energy. You got Chernobyl on it from HBO.
Yeah, this theme is a very effective one, and this would be the start of it.
Yep.
I think this was like one of the first. This movie was a first for a lot of things. Getting into the production, this came out 3 weeks before Destination Moon. They gave this a budget of $98,000, I believe, which was
that's less than Destination Moon.
less than 1,000. 18-day shoot, which was 2.5 weeks to shoot, and it's a mockbuster of the previous movie, or the movie that was about
right,
to
because
come out.
they heard the other people were making a movie like this, and they were like, let's get on it. And then Destination Moon had some like troubles on set or something. They took them longer to make it, and that's why one of them came out before the other one.
Yeah, but this movie would also be one of the first to have a theremin in science fiction music.
Ooh.
It would take over science fiction space music from here on out, but this would be the first.
We're gonna get a movie in a couple
Interestingly
episodes
enough,
that's like
due to
theremin heavy.
Yes. Interestingly enough, due to the budget, is that they had rocket stock footage from the V2 rocket, the Russian.
That gets used a lot.
They
a lot.
replaced
That's
it
stock
for
footage,
home
yeah.
media, and that's the one that we have. And I was like, I wonder if I could see these scenes. So I looked at the Mystery Science Theater version of this film, which has those scenes in it. If you want to see it, although they don't have the rights to that particular episode, they did make a Gizmoplex or whatever channel recently, and they don't have it on there. That's the one thing.
Gizmon, yeah, it's named after the Gizmonic Institute, which is part of the show.
Yeah, I think it's
so.
called,
Yeah, I need to watch the Mystery Science Theater that again. I think because I wanted to watch the movie in a serious way before I watched.
By the way,
this
movie
silly
was
one.
produced, written, and directed by the director of The Fly. For perspective, the movie The Fly, the cringy one, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, 1958, I think. Yeah. It's on our list. It's on our list. We're
also, a lot of the sets, all these fancy space equipment were shipped from an aircraft company, and they also wear firefighter and military gear on Mars.
Yeah.
And the movie was originally called None Came Back, but why would you watch the movie if that was the title?
That's terrible. That's like spoiler. That's a spoiler. That's like that's like M. Night Shyamalan making a movie with Bruce Willis.
That's like calling
and
the
Haley
sequel to Star Wars. Darth Vader was his father.
Who's your daddy? ... Darth Vader.
Why watch it?
Oh, that's great. We have to make alternate titles for movies and have them be spoilerific. Oh my goodness, we have to do that. All right, I'm gonna do that.
And the movie after that is Yoda dies in Dagobah.
Right.
They go back to the future.
It would be called Leia is your
They go
sister.
back to the future. Oh my!
Meet your sister. ... Leia, Princess Leia. It was like nobody would go see it if there was that. You got to tell it the Jedi's returning. Come on, let's do something interesting.
And then I see at the end.
Or Bruce Willis was
Empire
dead.
Strikes Back.
Bruce Willis was dead the whole time. That's what the movie's called. No.
The movie's called He Said Goodbye to Mr. Falcon.
What movie is that?
The Yippee-Ki-Yay movie.
Oh, okay. Oh, no. No.
Anyway, what did we think about this movie? The previous movie, is effects while a bit janky. I liked them. There are a lot of things I liked about the movie. It's very simple in scope, though. That's the one thing, is there's barely anything going on. This movie has more going on, a bigger cast, but at the same time, an archetype cast. They don't execute it well. But they have better ideas, and they do more with it. They go to Mars. They go one step further.
It feels more.
One small
it
step
feels
for
more
man,
classic.
another small step also for man.
It feels and woman. It doesn't. It feels more like the other 50s sci-fi space movies to me. The first one, I was waiting for it to go off base as far as scientifically, and I was like,
off base,
and it didn't go off base. It was
flew off base.
Wait a minute, that's pretty correct. I think what got me with Destination Moon was how accurate it was or how accurate it felt. You know, there's a term in fiction. It's called verisimilitude. It comes from the word simulation of truth. So it had this feeling of truth. It rang true.
Verisimilitude.
Yep. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite phrases because I use it with professional wrestling.
Time, yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with this movie.
With the second one or the first one?
With Rocketship X-M.
Yeah.
I like it better, but then I like it worse for the quality of actual content. I like it better for the actual ideas that they put in place.
Yeah. But they don't give you enough time to really. They don't give enough time to explore them.
This movie, better scope, worse execution.
Yeah.
But these two movies, came out in the same month. We can definitely agree. And were definitely, received pretty well, I think. I didn't write it down for Rocketship X-M, but I think Destination Moon did pretty well. It was advertised in magazines. I'm gonna bet off and say that they're both in this 1 month. This 1 month was revolutionary for space travel media.
100%. Now, can I tell you that that movies from here on out are gonna be really, really highly scientifically plausible? Not really. I mean, the whole gravity thing, they're just like they do on Star Trek, they're going to be like, make sure the gravity's button's on. Okay.
All sanity is going to disappear. As well as a particular man. Next movie we're doing is Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man. If I recall.
Wait, is that the next one, or is it...
No, it's the gorilla one, isn't it?
Oh, no. Yeah, okay. It's Bride of the Gorilla.
To redo that one, radioactivity,
Lost Continent,
plasma, microwaved ape. There we are.
Okay, so it's Lost Continent and Bride of the Gorilla is what we're doing. So, which...
Movies about...
Those movies could be further apart. Those movies could not be further apart.
Animals.
And marriage.
And marriage.
The sanctity of marriage, true love.
True love.
That brings us here together.
I was about to
with a gorilla. That was terrible. And no, the Lost Continent is probably going to be like a Lost World kind of movie, if I'm right. It does have.
It does have some of those. Since we did the Lost World.
Are you ready to see some more like Lost Lands with dinosaurs in them? You just kind of missing that in your life? Yeah.
So we'll have to see next time what those two movies bring to us. But until then, this has been Cinematic Fantastic. We did these two movies. We got to say, actually, did you like both of these movies?
Yeah,
which one did you like more? Let
us know. Oh, are you asking me?
Yes.
Okay. I thought the second one was more schlocky and kind of what I expect from a lot of science fiction movies, and it looks like they were just copying off the first movie, to be honest, and I found out they kind of were. The Destination Moon was so accurate and had a feeling of truth to it that's what pulled me in. And I didn't really like...
Yeah, I in fact like the second movie a little bit more.
Yeah.
But as I said, there are many things I hate about them.
It's kind of so over the top and crazy, that, but they're actually it almost felt like I wish they spent more time on Mars discovering all that stuff.
I feel like making one character purely the vehicle for sexism was not great.
Yep.
But speaking of vehicles, let's launch on to the next episode that will be on the screen in like a couple moments, and then we'll take a launch break. Let's form it like that. We'll take a launch break. Then come right back to you with the next episode.
Well, yes. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. Click here and here for some more excellent content. Hope you'll enjoy it. See you soon.